welcomes you all to today's webinar, ePayables 2016, Eyes on the Prize, and appreciate the time that you all have taken to come to this event today. I'd like to briefly introduce today's presenter before we start the demo. We have with us Andrew Bartoloni. Andrew is the Chief Research Officer at Ardent Partners, a recognized expert in sourcing, procurement, AP, and supply chain management. Andrew has been named a pro to be known by Supply and Demand Executive 3 times. Andrew has been an industry veteran for over 15 years and has benchmarked thousands of enterprises across all facets of the supply chain management operations. Andrew has held leadership roles in sales, marketing, and services at Ariba and Commerce One. He has experience in strategic sourcing, business process transformation, and software implementation. Background also includes consulting and investment banking. Also, Andrew has generously agreed to accept questions throughout the session. So, at the top right of your screen, you see a small dialog box for question and answers. So, you just have to simply type in your questions there, and I will pose them to Andrew, who will be addressing all the questions towards the end of the webinar. If at all he is unable to address the questions due to time constraints, he will be addressing them via mails after the event. Over to you, Andrew.
Great, thank you, Bhavesh, and hello, everybody. Good day. As you can see here, right? So my name is Andrew Bartoloni, and for the next hour, I'm going to speak to you about my latest research report that's focused on the AP market. So we're going to cover a lot of ground, but it should be, I think, a very interesting presentation. We've done some new things in this year's study that we've never done in the past, but just give you sort of a general overview of each section, right? So, the state of AP, I'm going to look at the current state and the evolution of the role of the accounts payable function and its level of engagement and alignment within the enterprise today. We'll look at some of the drivers and priorities that AP leaders have as well for both this year and out into the future. And then we're going to focus next section on technology, right? So we use the term ePayables as an umbrella term that really refers to all different types of solutions that automate all or some part of the AP process, right? So the invoice and payment processes. We're gonna in this section, I'm gonna make an assessment of the extent to which organizations are leveraging these solutions today to improve performance. And talk a little bit about the impact in each of those areas. Then we're going to, in the best-in-class performance section, really focus in on performance and operational benchmarks that we see in the market today. We're going to focus a fair amount of time in this section on what the leaders in AP are doing, like the top performers, the group that we call best-in-class. And we're going to look at not only are we going to share their performance metrics, how they're doing and operating at what level, but we're going to look to try to understand the drivers. What are the things that these leaders do to outperform their competition. We're going to conclude with a series of recommendations, and then as Bhavesh noted, as you have questions, plan to answer them at the end, but as you're thinking of them, please type them in. We are covering a lot of ground today, and I want to make sure that we can address as many of those as possible, and as noted, if time does not allow, I commit to answering all of those. I also have my contact information there in case there's a follow-on question after the session. Right. So, in 2016, many EP teams are positioned to move beyond providing value to the enterprise based solely upon increasing efficiencies and to transform the function into a thriving intelligence hub for the business at large. Right? These leading AP teams have their eyes on the prize, right? And they must now strive to become strategic partners that can showcase their importance and make an impact at the highest level of business operations. Right? Now, for more than a decade, the research I've conducted in the space has shown that transforming the AP function into a vital component of the organization is both possible and recommended. Right? In this time, in the past 11 years, essentially, that I've been covering the accounts payable space, there have been some great advances in AP technology, and that combined with the growing sophistication of AP leaders has really helped create greater awareness of the strategic value that a well-executed AP transformation initiative can deliver. Right? AP teams interested in moving to a higher level of performance, it's not easy, but it can be done. It is doable. They must garner the support of their functional partners in procurement and treasury, and we believe the best way to do that is to work with these groups collaboratively to change the perception of AP as a back office team that's focused solely on invoice processing into one that's a vital function that can support the strategic objectives of the enterprise. And so let's start to drill down, right? I've for some reason decided to include another slide about myself here. That's probably an oversight, but Bhavesh gave a nice intro, right? He mentioned I've been working in the space for 17 years, 11 of those now as an industry analyst. I have conducted this annual study starting in 2006, and in that time, have managed more than 100 similar studies to what I'm presenting today, benchmarking more than 10,000 distinct AP operations across all different aspects of their people, process, and technology. And so, that breadth of time and that scope of research, right, sort of culminates today, right? So what you're seeing today is the data and the output of our brand new report, which is available from Zycus. But, it's something that has been building over a long period of time. So I'm the Chief Research Officer at Ardent Partners. Ardent Partners is a research and advisory firm focused on supply management, right? We look at the processes, the technologies, the strategies that drive operational excellence across procurement and the finance functions of an enterprise. And finally, if you enjoyed today's presentation and the discussion, are interested in this topic, looking for more information, invite you to visit Payables Place. This is our research site dedicated to AP and really focusing in on topics, sharing news, sharing our research and other analysis that we think is relevant for those working in the accounts payable function today. I've mentioned that this is an annual study. This is an annual, what I'm presenting today are the key findings of an annual study that I have conducted starting back in 2006, so technically the 11th edition. Some variation, some questions remain fairly static over that period of time, some new. So we cover some new ground. We also, this allows us to understand the trends that sort of shifts in the marketplace, where things are starting to change, and the AP function, certainly has evolved over the past 10 or 11 years. It's evolved even more rapidly over the past 3 or 4. But the data that I'm presenting today, just so everybody's clear, is drawn from 184 finance, AP, treasury, a few procurement professionals. The survey was completed in May of this year, so very fresh research, coming from the AP function. It's drawn from a broad range of industries. The data does tilt towards North America from a geographic standpoint. It does tilt towards large enterprise, which we would say are companies with revenues more than $1 billion, but feel that it's highly relevant for AP operations of all sizes. I think we'll just progress forward there. And, again, this report is made available by Zycus, the sponsor. The report and additional commentary, you'll see that on Payables Place. You'll see that on a couple of our other sites as well, CPO Rising being one of those. So I'm just going to start to drill in and look at the state of AP in 2016, right? So what's going on in the world of accounts payable? I think, when you look at it, the reality for most AP departments in 2016 is that although the industry, the profession, is in the midst of a broad transformation, the general perception of the AP function significantly lags recent industry advances. Right, and so we talk about in the report, right, that to accomplish a true business process transformation, AP departments must transform the way they think as much as they transform their processes and their systems. and not just there, right? Not just within AP, right? They must also work to aggressively change how they're perceived within the enterprise, right? In the world of AP, in the world of business, right, perception is reality, right? There have been, the good news, right, is that there has been movement, and the industry really does have momentum. Perceptions are changing inside the business, changing slowly perhaps for many, and the AP teams spearheading this shift are the ones that have aligned department goals with business priorities while also driving greater efficiencies and value, right? And that's not an easy feat. It is doable, right? I sort of keep coming back to that, right? If it was extraordinarily easy, everybody would have done it already, and we wouldn't be talking about this. It takes focus, it takes commitment, it takes some resources, it takes some skill, but it can be done, as we're going to talk about how the best-in-class organizations are perceived in their organization and the level of performance that they're delivering as well, right? The traditional view, right, so I guess I would say that the entrenched perceptions, like this legacy view, they can be overcome, right? And it's a worthwhile, project or initiative to undertake, right? I think that, the challenge is that the tactically focused AP teams, end up doing themselves a disservice. They end up doing the larger enterprise a disservice. I think that, as we sort of move forward and we start to talk about, well, sort of the gaps between what the best-in-class, what the leaders in the AP space are doing relative to the rest of the market, right, it really does show that the benefit, the dividend of an AP transformation initiative, really does pay out well. And ultimately, it's those AP teams that stay focused on their goals. And whether that's greater process automation or deeper insight into data, these are the groups that really do achieve the prize, right? They keep their eyes on the prize, they strive for it, they can attain it, and the prize, really being increased strategic value. Now, I want to talk a little bit, before we move to the next slide, have to pull in the poll. And so, Bhavesh, here we go. All right. So the poll that we see here is how strategically valuable is AP? Is it involved in strategic activities? Does it have tight collaboration with partners? Is it viewed as a partner? Is it more important to the enterprise? And so we're going to give a few seconds here to take a look at that poll. And the poll has ended, and am I sharing that, Bhavesh?
Yep, you are. Just wait for the results to come. We will wait for 5 seconds.
Okay.
Okay, and these are the results.
You see them? If you want to share the answers, I'm not getting a view here as to what those results are, unfortunately.
I'm sorry, but there has been some technical issue with that. I don't know why these answers are not being shown over here.
Okay, so the good news is that with this poll question, and maybe we try the next one, or maybe we skip it, is that I've backfilled the answers with the data shown from the study. Right, we tried to ask a similar question of the audience today, and really what we see here is that there is an emerging or new perception of AP. For many years, AP has been a candidate for enhancement and improvement, and it's a function that, when improved, drives financial and operational value on a significant scale. That being said, it's only recently that enterprises really start to look at the AP unit as a strategically valuable business partner, worthy of involvement and engagement. AP and these forward-thinking organizations really have gotten past the perception issue that the function labors under elsewhere. And so let's look at the data and let's talk a little bit about what this means, right? And so, with much of the AP world, you can look at this as the glass half full or glass half empty. And what we see is roughly in thirds, we see sort of a division between the 15 and 18%, or exactly a third, 33%, that are really viewed as exceptionally or very valuable, right? These are collaborators. These are groups that are making not only an impact from an efficiency standpoint, from a collaboration standpoint, and from an effectiveness standpoint, but they're also starting to make a financial impact. And that's one of the things we'll talk about as we start to look forward into the future of AP for most organizations is, once you have figured out the paper problem on the inbound invoice side, this starts to unlock opportunities or present opportunities for organizations to begin to make a greater impact on the payment side, on the cash and the cash management side, and on the financial performance side of the enterprise. 34%, right? See, it's somewhat valuable, an occasional collaborator. Unfortunately, that third in red, not strategic and tactical, right? But I would say that if we had asked this question, years ago, the vast majority would view AP as a non-strategic, poor collaborator, siloed entity. And so, these numbers not showing you year over year, but really, I can tell you that this does just put AP in a new light for a majority of organizations. Again, a lot of ways to go to get to where I think the opportunity truly lies, and I oftentimes think about the transformation, right? So the other part of our research in supply management focuses on procurement. Procurement over the past 15 years, over the past 20 years even, or even over a shorter period of time, has really almost completely changed how it operates within the enterprise, right? You have a chief procurement officer, a C-level procurement person in about 90% of all enterprises today. That would have been unthinkable in the year 2000, 2001, and it's come an extraordinary way. We believe that AP organizations can follow the procurement script. Doesn't mean that there's necessarily a chief payables officer in the offing, but it does mean, or what we do think it means is that AP has, huge upside from an impact standpoint and from a collaboration standpoint, and we'll talk about how we spot this trend rather than just simply, sort of the perception area. But right, you start to look at what is AP prioritizing in 2016, to drive. The drive to improve AP operations and expand upon the value that the function can deliver, really has accelerated in recent years, and the emergence of technology that can streamline invoice processing while also improving data visibility has played an important role in that. And what I mean by that is, right, that these newer technologies have resulted in AP having the ability to serve its original function, which is efficiently processing invoices and paying suppliers and resolving exceptions, and really, closing out a seamless P2P process, but it's also been able to start to contribute value to key stakeholders in the form of financial and operational intelligence, right? We look at the collaborators, and we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about how good a job the average AP department does today from a collaboration standpoint. But 3, 5 years ago, certainly 10 years ago, the top and almost sole priority for AP was to reduce processing costs. And what we've seen is that, that might have been 8 out of 10 organizations, right? So that is no longer necessarily the top. I mean, it is a top priority, but there's been this increasing awareness that the information that's captured throughout the AP process has a lot of value, to AP, but it also has a lot of value to the other stakeholders, right, to procurement. When you look at supplier performance, when you look at spend visibility and understanding savings opportunities, supplier rationalization opportunities, volume discount opportunities, and the like, that information's coming through the AP operation. We start to look at the expanded role that Treasury has taken over the past couple of years, and the value really sort of an overlooked part of the cash management process has been Treasury getting involved with AP to begin to think more strategically about how it pays its suppliers, when it pays its suppliers, and on what platform. It sort of links to improving reporting and analytics, and certainly collaboration plays a key role in every business function. And I think that, the world of a siloed business function sort of operating, in their individual vacuums is certainly something that can no longer exist in world-class organizations, and that, that extends to AP, that extends to all business functions. Now, when we look at AP's goals in 2016, right, I think, understanding AP's priorities and how they align to enterprise objectives, that's an important first step toward improving AP operations and, again, altering perceptions of the AP team as a whole. But just as important as understanding priorities is comprehending how those priorities can align to AP's goals over the next 24 months. It's in this fact, right, that the AP and finance leaders that are preparing for future business needs are, the ones most likely to establish a powerful AP brand and expand their influence and impact over the next few years, right? So what does all that mean, right? So we talked about priorities, and then try to understand, well, how do those map to the specific goals that the team has for this year, right? And so certainly a lot of what we talk about from an AP transformation standpoint, from an AP strategic value standpoint, from really keeping your eyes on the prize, really does come through a technology prism, right? Maybe even more so than any of the other business function areas, at least that Ardent Partners covers. Technology really is the starting point. It is the enabler to really get organizations to the next level of value. And so it's not a surprise that AP departments today are more focused on automating their processes than really any other thing. And come back and we'll talk a little bit more about the Ardent Partners E Payables Framework and why we've created that. But I think it's fair to say that technology, collaboration, and data visibility are really fundamental drivers of the broader AP sort of industry-wide or business-wide transformation that we've experienced. And so, we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about the technologies. I think it's fair to say, though, that, there are challenges that all organizations face, and in 2016 for AP, that's no different, right? The AP team faces several key obstacles on the road to achieving greater relevance and impact within the enterprise, including exceptions, the high cost of invoice processing, the length of time it takes for an invoice to be approved, and poor visibility into AP data, right? When you start to look at all of the challenges that you see here, sort of there's a common thread that links, the solution to, how do you bypass, how do you surmount these challenges, right? Technology plays, can address each of these areas, right? When you're thinking about, if you're an AP, if you're part of an AP operation that today is largely manual, right? So you're dealing with, that doesn't mean you're not getting emailed PDFs, but, if you think about the core invoice as it comes in, and, if that's paper-based, think about the challenges and the delays that you have in actually matching and reconciling and getting the invoice ultimately approved and paid, versus an automated fashion. Think about the cost and the time. And really, I think that the bottom challenge here on this list, right, is one that we've started to see more frequently over the past couple of years, or to rank higher off a much longer list than what I'm presenting to you today. And that's, AP's become more self-aware, and they've become, more focused on, being the lead advocates for themselves in trying to change the situation. And, again, this is something that over the broad arc of a decade, made some very significant strides forward, the leading organizations, in particular. But again, where the industry is and where it's heading, there's still a gap to get to its final destination, I guess I would say. one way to sort of look at that, where's AP today, and the data points aren't on this slide, but give you sort of a relative sense of the concept again of the glass half full, glass half empty. What I'm presenting to you today are essentially capabilities that AP organizations you would think by and large would have, right? Do you have standard processes? Can you do matching? Do you have visibility into your metrics, right? I mean, things that you would hope most business functions would have today, and what we see is when we start to move away from the 2- or 3-way matching and standard AP processes that a majority of AP organizations have in place today, you start to look at these other things that you would say, that I think reasonably you could argue would be fundamental capabilities of any AP operation, and you start to see that, well, the reality is, they're not in place in all organizations, and that there are opportunities for the vast majority of groups to really begin to take the next step, begin to reach for the prize, if not build a plan to get there. Now we talked and have over the past 5 or 6 years really looked at, from both a procurement standpoint and from an AP standpoint, the level of collaboration that exists between the two functions. And I would say that in no uncertain terms, the Great Recession, 2008 to 2010, whatever time period you want to put on that for your business or for the region you're listening in today, that has been a great driver of getting procurement and finance much more directly onto the same page. CFO and CPO used to be colleagues. Now they're strong collaborators. A strong majority of CPOs and CFOs report that they have high and very strong levels of collaboration. That has cascaded down to the procurement and AP relationship. I think that as well as the emergence of true P2P solutions has really come to bring procurement and AP closer together, right? We still, there are some organizations that have a combined procurement and AP department, and maybe sometimes AP reports into procurement. Most organizations don't have that, and there's control issues that probably keep that from happening in most organizations. But whether or not they are operating as a single business function, a single line of reporting, the collaboration has improved. Now, I don't have the back years to validate or to really show you that, and so I'm telling you more by sense of feel. And from other questions that we've asked, what I'm showing to you right here is a question that we asked really for the first time, that I believe in the past decade. And that's we asked the respondents, right, those coming from AP to rate on a scale of 1 to 4, where 1 is little or no collaboration and 4 is heavily collaborative, the level of collaboration between AP and other groups. And maybe surprisingly, the level of collaboration with suppliers is really something that has always been a perception that's been problematic, right? I think even still today, the average AP department staff time, about 25% of that is spent responding to inquiries. Now, some of those inquiries can be internal, but a lot of time they're external. And what it really does is it speaks to the value of technology, the value of sort of rethinking the traditional buyer-seller relationships. We see procurement sort of building towards a strong level of collaboration from the AP perspective. From the procurement perspective, those numbers, I can tell you, have improved significantly over the past 5 or 6 years. Opportunities we see are for AP and Treasury to begin to become much more stronger collaboration partners, and how does that or why is it important? It's important to help change the perception of AP. It's important for AP to have other stakeholders helping to champion its investment in new technologies and in initiatives that improve performance. And so from here we're going to segue on to the technology component of the presentation. And really, when I think about AP, and I sort of have already mentioned this before, but technology really does play a key role in fostering the strategic importance of AP. Without the right solutions in place, or without the executive support necessary to pursue the proper technology, AP is much more likely to sort of deserve the old perception, right, to really function that way. Leading AP teams, on the other hand, they've made the case that AP can provide value far and above efficiency, right, the efficient processing of supplier invoices. And so we're going to talk a little bit now more specifically about AP or AP technology and some of the innovations we've seen. And again, we use the term ePayables as that broad umbrella term. Before I start to drill down into the technology, right, so in each of the years that we've written this report, right, we introduce or reintroduce or present the E Payables Framework that we developed years ago. We think that this is a useful tool for organizations as they start to think about their processes, as they start to think about how they improve upon those processes, right? Essentially, what we did is we developed this framework to help AP departments evaluate their various processes by putting them into smaller, more manageable segments. Right, so invoice receipt, how invoices are received, process, how invoices are validated and approved, and pay, how invoices are scheduled for payment and actually executed. One of the things that started to signal that AP was becoming more strategic, that enterprises were thinking more strategically about AP, was that the AP transformation, until honestly 2 or 3 years ago, an AP transformation, essentially meant let's get rid of the paper invoice, right? Whether it's document management or scan and capture, a little bit of workflow. And it sort of ended there, much in the same way that the original P2P solutions that were discussed and brought to market in 2000 really didn't include the payables part of it. Now an AP transformation includes the payment component too, and we think that that's very exciting, and that's going to be one of the drivers as we move forward into thinking about, what's the strategic impact that AP can have, and where are we going to start to look at the upside. From a process improvement priority standpoint, I think it's an interesting question to review. In a world where continual improvement has become standard operating procedure, AP groups are constantly looking to improve their areas. It looks like this year about 40% are more focused on improving the processing, the approval and the related workflow, the routings associated with that. Really has taken the top priority here. And just, felt that was interesting and worthwhile to share. What we also think is interesting and worthwhile to share is that, given the recent trends towards improving business processes, in a bid to increase efficiencies and drive down costs, we're presenting to you, in the blue, all the different ePayables or AP automation technologies and the level of adoption. What you see in blue are those that are currently in place or currently in use, and then in the gray represents the plan to use, right? So over the next 12 to 24 months, respondents have indicated that they do have a plan to adopt those solutions, and sort of going back to the point that maybe I didn't carry all the way through, right? So businesses are looking to be more efficient. They're looking to drive down costs. These solutions have proven ROIs. I guess it's not surprising so much as it is interesting to see that some of these solutions aren't yet universally adopted, and I think that what happens is that as the function gains more momentum, as it becomes a better collaborator, as there becomes a greater understanding of the value that AP can deliver, it's a cycle that sort of builds unto itself and allows for greater investment in the function when you're able to draw out greater value. And so, in the report, I probably won't spend the time here today, but in the report, we look at each of the technology areas, sort of apply it to the ePayables framework that I showed you on a couple of slides ago, and really talk about, how do you improve and automate each of those areas, and what are the things that go across them, right? So, we'll come back, we'll talk a little bit about touchless processing and the importance of e-invoicing. You look at, sort of holistically within AP, then there's the sort of the holistic view of P2P and the relationship of e-procurement to e-payables. And, still lots and, significant opportunity and a business function that as yet is still not fully automated. One of the drivers why we think we're going to continue to see growth in the blue, right? The adoption of all of those solutions, not just the ones I just mentioned, is the importance of data, right? I mean, in the modern business, the huge data streams, generated at nearly every level of the enterprise, from the CEO's office to the manufacturing floor out in the field, enterprises that can harness the power of multiple data streams, without getting drenched by them, really do stand to benefit the most from rich intelligence that the data provides, right? And AP is no different, right? I mean, what we see here is, data, and maybe by default, because the world is becoming so much more data-driven, significant 75%, 74% of all AP operations today really are understanding that there is value in the data, that there is intelligence that can be garnered by AP, that can be shared and garnered by their collaborative partners as well, right? It really starts to make the AP function significantly more interesting. And so we said, all right, we've asked, sort of understand the importance of data to the business as a whole, to each business function. Maybe not a surprise, right? And so the question here was that, how critical. And so, a significant group, or I'm sorry, I got the numbers backwards there, right? So 81% think it's very important, and a full quarter think that the data is critical to operations. So what and how is the data used throughout the enterprise, right? I think, again, you start to look at, AP, the function in and of itself, there's a lot of value that can be generated in improving supplier relationships and in driving bottom line savings. But a lot of value can also be harnessed or I guess realized by other parts of the organization. And so let's just look at, how data can be used, right? So when you look at, where organizations fall down from an AP standpoint, and there are some that would argue that the AP process, the AP function really is designed solely to handle and manage invoice exceptions, right? When you have visibility into data, you're going to have a much greater visibility to address invoice exceptions, perform root cause analysis, and ensure that the same exceptions don't keep popping up, and that's something that's very hard to do. Those of you listening in certainly know when you're working in a manual environment versus something where you can really start to track and better understand what is the source of those exceptions. Is it supplier related? Is it something that's happening internally? Without the visibility, you struggle. Improving finance procurement collaboration, right? Talk to anybody in the sourcing team. What do they want to know when they're thinking about developing the sourcing strategy for their next category? They want to know the spend. Who's it with? What was it for? What's the line item pricing, right? AP is generally the key to that data. Forecasting, budgeting, and planning, right? Again, sort of along those same lines, right, with finance itself, what did we spend and how and with whom, right? Certainly you've got your payroll and things that don't fall under the AP purview, but when you look at the percentage of your company's revenue that is paid out to suppliers, right? If you look at the money that's paid out to suppliers as a percentage of your total revenue, I mean, that's a significant number, and that's why we think that there's extraordinary value here. And it's really a process that has gone, it's a process that hasn't had a lot of focus from anyone outside of AP until very recently. And technology and the visibility into process, the visibility into data is really starting to unlock that. or really drive those opportunities. Enhancing supplier management, right? So, it's very useful for procurement to understand which suppliers are performing well, which suppliers are problematic from an invoicing standpoint would be one type of supplier performance. But also, it's helpful to understand, that when you think about the importance that your suppliers have on your business, right? Organizations are only going to rely more and more on their supply chains in a world of specialization and globalization. You don't want to be the high-cost customer. You don't want to be the customer that has a lot of friction around the transactions, right? You want to be as good a customer to your strategic suppliers as possible so that they feel that it's worthwhile to invest in the relationships. Now, ask the question here, this year, what are some game-changing innovations that could really alter AP? And so we've asked this question from a technology standpoint, and then in the back end of this presentation, we do talk a little bit about what are the things that will drive AP to the next level. But what we see here is, the common characteristic here is streamlining operations, right? Moving to a truly touchless environment, which was identified by almost 60% of enterprises, can remove the act of processing an invoice from the day-to-day duties of the AP team, right? This allows AP to process more invoices per employee and focus on tasks that are of a more strategic nature. Anything the enterprise can do to remove tactical duties from AP is only going to benefit the wider organization, because AP can reallocate its resources to things that are more strategic and ultimately leverage its operational and financial data to help drive more value. Other things that are really shown here on the technology side are more agile reporting dashboards, right? It would be great to be able to manage the team to understand where people are spending time on different activities, where the bottlenecks are in the approval process, so that you can address those. And then certainly, as the world becomes more mobile, huge opportunity there as well. Now, let's spend a few minutes talking about best-in-class performance. And a decade ago, or I guess, almost, technically, I guess it was 10 years ago that I started writing this report, this annual report. The idea that an AP operation could be effective and efficient in supporting strategic business objectives while working as a key collaborator with both internal stakeholders and external suppliers may not have been impossible necessarily, but it was highly unlikely. Right? Today, that level of performance is more than possible, right? In fact, the group representing the top 20% of performers, right? So we called them the best in class. I'll put some parameters around the definition in a slide or two. But as a group, these top performers really are starting to unlock the strategic value of AP as well as drive efficiencies. Many more AP organizations have this same opportunity, but we're going to talk and look a little bit more at how they get there. I think from a time standpoint, we'll just move to the slide here and find it's an interesting question here. Right? So how does the CFO evaluate AP's performance? So occasionally AP does report into procurement or into a shared services center. More frequently, CFO has the oversight, and whether or not that's the exact case, the CFO's perspective is critical because the CFO is essentially the number 2 role within the company. AP departments are most often evaluated based upon the volume of their activity, which includes the raw numbers of invoices and payments processed, and that's I guess that's in keeping with the AP brand as a tactically focused invoice and payment processing team. It's also logical that payment metrics focused on accuracy hold more weight than other evaluation measures, right? And so one of the takeaways here is that these organizations are looking still at more efficiency type metrics than on financial impact type metrics, but we do believe that we're going to start to see some of that change. Again, what happens is as the AP process becomes more efficient and automated at the front end of the process, opportunities are going to open up on the back end of the process. So let's look at what the AP benchmarks are today from a performance standpoint. I'm just going to sort of bring these up. what I show to you here are the average performance metrics in each of these key areas. The average cost to process an invoice, $13, down from $22 a decade ago, and continuing to drive down. Average invoice cycle time, 12.2 days, again, down from more than 20 days a decade ago, and continuing to push forward. The percentage of invoices processed straight through at almost a quarter in the marketplace, which is an impressive number when you look at still the amount of paper invoices that exist in the marketplace today. And then the average exception rate, right? So almost 1 in 5 invoices, there's an exception. And really, when you start to look at, where are the problem areas, what are the things that help drive AP operations to the next level, managing invoices better, eliminating them, really becomes an important thing to focus on, an important metric to start measuring and thereby begin to start improving. And now, we're sort of doing somewhat of a night and day comparison, right? In this study, we defined best-in-class performance as the 20% of enterprises with the lowest average invoice processing costs and shortest average invoice process cycle times. And what you see here in the red numbers, really a stark contrast. And you can look at this on a percentage basis. You can look at this on sort of an aggregate basis. If you were to look at just simply the cost to process a single invoice and the gap there, right, of almost a little bit more than $12 per invoice. Apply that to the number of invoices processed by your operation per day or per week or per month or per year, and the numbers really start to add up. And so, you look at the speed of processing a single invoice, right? And so these are the average costs to process a single invoice. This is the average time to process a single invoice. The invoice exception rate, still 1 in 10. A little bit more than that for the best in class, but where you start to see, where the leverage is and where the best in class really start to drive their performance. That's the percentage of invoices processed straight through, right? So this is touchless. These are invoices that come in and are approved without any human interaction. And when you get to that level, right, you're still dealing with, exceptions that pop out of the system, but it allows you to focus on more strategic aspects or reallocate resources, drive extraordinary value and drive extraordinary efficiencies. So let's look at, maybe not surprisingly, you start to see that a majority of best-in-class API operations are viewed as very or exceptionally valuable, right? Sort of you draw a very straight line with companies that are doing a great job are viewed as doing such, right? There's still probably a little bit of a lag in the perception and the performance, and that would be true for all others as well. Key capabilities of the best-in-class, right? And so, again, even the best-in-class, have some opportunities to sort of shore up their processes, but much stronger numbers as shown here in the blue across some of the core areas that we think are important. And when you do a little bit more of a comparison, right, best in class are more than 50% likely to have standardized their AP processes. They're straight through invoice processing. Again, big driver of efficiencies, big driver of visibility, big driver of being able to capture value, right, is e-invoicing or the solutions that essentially allow an invoice to come in and to be processed and approved without intervention, right? So the best in class, right, really one of the key factors here is that they're doing this on more than a 2-to-1 times basis. And this carries over, as you would expect, to the technology. Right. Again, best in class, not universally automated, but significantly further down the road on their AP transformations. In each of these technology areas, the best in class have adopted them at a rate of anywhere between 20 to 70% more frequently. And it's not simply the adoption of the technology, right? There's when you're dealing with P2P solutions, you are reliant on the third-party supplier to become enabled on it. But what the best in class do, they not only adopt the solutions in a greater fashion, they use them to a much greater degree and drive significantly more value out of them as a result. And so, where does that leave us, right? I want to talk a little bit about, where does that leave us, right? And so, I believe, the AP function is well positioned to shatter the perceptions that have held it back. And that's that AP is a tactically focused department that only provides value through invoice processing and payment scheduling, right? I mean, certainly the modern AP team can break from the past and achieve its prize of value in the enterprise more directly than ever before. And so, outside, and again, the chapter will detail, recommendations, and there's actually an expanded list of recommendations. We'll also talk about, modeling the performance of the best in class, which again, the report does in a very significant way. I'm going to give you some recommendations, but also wanted to talk to you about the simple answer of, we asked AP professionals, what will it take to get your performance to the next level, your AP operation? And certainly it's important to keep your eyes on the prize. You do also want to be thinking about the future and the direction of the organization. What are those game-changing strategies, right? And so technology playing a very significant part in that, in really step-level changing the performance of an AP department, as well as better, improving the exception handling and root cause analysis, right? That really is an area where, in our data here this year, and the slight variation, but you usually see anywhere between 15 and 20% of all invoices coming in as being flagged as an exception, and that's a number that we believe is something that should be addressed, particularly for those that are again 1 in 5. As we look out, right, so we spent a lot of time talking about the state of AP today. We do that in the context of the direction of where the organization is going. Certainly we've been, sort of mapping the trends for a long period of time. But this year we did also ask AP leaders, well, what are the things you're expecting within your function over the next 2 to 3 years, really? So looking at it through 2018. Unlike, other business functions, AP's changes and shifts have been, at a more steady pace, right? The AP function today, and probably the AP function in the future, look fairly similarly from a business process standpoint, right? We're not necessarily expecting that AP take on new responsibilities that really expand beyond invoice management and payment and supplier, sort of the B2B payment aspects, whereas procurement has found itself being drawn into a much larger range of projects and responsibilities. But what we do see, or what AP leaders are telling us, is that, certainly vast majority believe that, the amount of paper in the marketplace today in their own AP operations is going to significantly reduce over the next couple of years, and that the AP process will be largely automated. And so for those of you that are thinking about AP transformation, I do want you to refer back to the E Payables Framework. We've written quite extensively over the years about how to use that framework, not only from a business process improvement standpoint, but from a business transformation standpoint and from an AP automation project planning and adoption standpoint as well. So vast majority think AP is going to be more automated, as a result, fewer manual tasks, and that the skill sets are within AP are going to change. And some of the other areas that didn't make it onto this list but are also expected to happen by a majority of organizations in the future is that AP will have a much more direct impact on supply chain finance and on the way that cash is managed, or working capital optimization. And so I'm going to give you a few recommendations, and we'll leave a few minutes here for some questions. And so, in order to transform an AP function into a streamlined, holistic center of enterprise excellence and intelligence, enterprises must first follow the path sort of laid out by the best-in-class organizations that we've just talked about, as it relates to their technology adoption, as it relates to their cultural, structure and organizational structure, as it relates to their programmatic capabilities and competencies. And so walk you through a few recommendations here, right? And so I think first, or I didn't put it on here, but I've talked about it a fair amount, improve the AP brand. Right, a broad-based industry-wide transformation that began a decade ago continues today. But you have to be the brand ambassadors within the organization. strengthen AP's core, such as, standardization and matching capabilities, right? There's still far too many organizations that haven't codified best practices around the basic rote processes of the AP department. Begin to and prioritize if you have the ability today, the usage of data in decision making, right? Why? So for many years and for many organizations still today, how and when a supplier is paid is based on sort of a first in, first out analysis. Let's take the step back. Let's get engagement with Treasury, an organization that does have responsibility for ensuring liquidity, for ensuring cash management and getting the greatest returns on the company's assets. Extraordinary amount of money is paid out, right? AP at some level is a cash distribution function. Let's get engagement with the organization that is really charged with making those decisions and has the level of insight as to what the cash needs are of an organization. Let's bypass some of the barriers that have existed today. Some of those barriers exist within the AP function themselves, right? And I think that controllers and AP managers and leaders of organizations need to start to think about the direction of the company, the direction of the function, and what that means for the level of talent, the level of skills that exist within the organization, the size of the organization, and where it's focused, and what type of skills you want to bring into the organization, whether that's through new hires or training, and how do you retain those? Again, AP is starting to change the way, right, particularly with the introduction of more ePayable solutions. The skill sets associated with the core AP function starts to change and emerge, and so you have to begin to start accounting for that. And then, I think that there are opportunities to we've started to see more AP organizations think about their transformations more holistically to include not just the front-end invoice receipt, but carry it all the way through to payment. There are solutions now that are also starting to drive financial impact. And when you start to look at the entirety of the AP process and you look at the efficiency opportunities, when you look at the effectiveness and the engagement and the collaboration opportunities, when you look at the opportunities for other stakeholders to leverage value out of the data that can be captured in solutions, and when you start to look at some of the solutions themselves that can drive a financial impact, right? You start to look at dynamic discounting and things on the back end of the process. All of those things add up to a much more compelling business case for transformation and automation than simply we have a lot of inbound paper invoices and we're bogged down, right? Tell the bigger story, focus on them, and look at some of the innovative solutions, particularly on the pay side. So with that, I think, Bhavesh, we're going to pull you back in. We've got a few minutes for some questions here, and then, we'll conclude. Bhavesh, any questions for me?
We have a couple of questions with us. The first one is, what can AP do to improve its brand?
Okay. Yeah. Right. So great question. Right. So I started to make allusion to that. In the recommendations, and then to sort of lead off the report with it as well, and talk about, perception is reality, right? When most people think of, most people outside of AP, most people, even people in procurement today, right? You don't get the warm and fuzzies of, this is the game-changing function that's going to, move the organization forward, right? Most, I'd say almost no company has ever gone out of business because they process their invoices slowly, right? Most AP operations, they're not broken, but they do need fixing, right? And so, those that have the momentum, those that have that are best in class today, right? They are perceived as better, but you still need to be brand ambassadors, right? We're working in a world where, collaboration is de rigueur, right? It's expected. That's the standard business operating. You're expected to be a partner with whomever, right? And this is if you're in sales and marketing, you're on ops, you're in procurement, you're in AP. you are representing the function. And so for AP leaders, right, you want to start understanding who you need to engage with and how you engage with them, and make sure that the people that are doing the engaging, that are doing the collaboration, actually have the skills, the business consulting skills, the presentation skills that help to change the perception, right? So one, it takes a very deliberate way, it takes a very deliberate approach in trying to change the perception. And then you have to identify the brand ambassadors within your organization and other stakeholders that can really help you and ensure that they have the skill sets to carry the perception forward.
Thank you, Andrew, for the answer. We have one more question. Is there an argument for using three-way as well as two-way? Would it be okay to use two-way only and use the approval system to confirm receipt? What am I missing?
So it depends on, it depends on certain industries. So two-way match, like there are some industries like retail that have moved away from three-way match and have really, felt that it's too costly to do you're getting your shipments of, boxes of toothpaste or whatever it is, that it's far too time consuming to actually do the analysis at that point of receipt. And so, there are, I guess I wouldn't make the case that there's a right or wrong answer to two or three-way matching. What we have done or what we've presented in our question is we've asked, essentially, how are your matching capabilities, and have let the organization, we don't ask a three-way match question for an organization, if they're only doing two-way match, we're asking a question for both types of processes. So I don't think you're missing anything. I think you have to do somewhat of a cost-benefit analysis as to what it is that's being received, and whether it's if you sort of look at a widely distributed operation, do you need to have a different type of solution that allows for receipt to be captured, by somebody on site in that plant floor or out, on the rig or wherever they are in the other destination. So there's several ways to do that, and I think, you've got to make that assessment. And I could answer the question more specifically if we knew sort of the background of the industry, but it's not we're not making a recommendation that three is the way to go versus two. So I think that you have to sort of sort that out based upon your specific situation. And so I think I would say, right, so the person said that they're a biotech company of 100 people. Two-way matching is probably fine with what it is that you're receiving, right? And you can sort of figure out, if there's things that are missing on the back end, right, when you're people who are using the goods that are in fact delivered. And so, I think with that, I did want to mention, right, on behalf of Zycus that, you're all invited to Horizon 2016, which is a two-day conference organized by Zycus, which provides a platform to interact with analysts. I'll be there, practitioners and industry experts on procurement challenges, trends, and their impact on your business. This is the 5th edition and scheduled to take place between October 23rd and 25th at the Ritz-Carlton, Dove Mountain, Arizona. To know more about the event, visit the website mentioned here. And don't forget to use the special discount code if you are looking to register. Again, I'll be there and hope to see you there. And, again, as you have other questions, I've included the contact information in the slides here. I want to thank everybody for attending. Bhavesh, I'm not sure if there's anything else you want to say to conclude it.
Thanks a lot, Andrew, for the wonderful webinar today. I would like to thank all the attendees also for attending the webinar. And if you have any more questions regarding ePayables and how you hit the mark and aim for the big prize, you might mail to Andrew or to us, and we'll pass on your questions to Andrew, who will be answering them.
Thank you.
Thank you all for attending.